Hello, hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, let's get started here. Got the chart. We got Felix right here. And let's share. So we go stop, share. Okay. All right, so we have a Virgo moon on the south node. Scorpio rising, Pluto rising. It's always interesting. Um, and then an Aries sun. Interesting. Very interesting chart. And then like Capricorn, Mars, and Mercury conjunct the North Node like exactly in Pisces. Huh. Well, and then in terms of the moon's aspects, you've got the square with Saturn and Uranus and Chiron on the other side. All right. And that T square shoots out right at the North Node. All right. Well, to start out, Moon in Virgo, well, Moon with South Node is interesting always because basically you're bringing in a lot, kind of your main. So when we talk about a Virgo South Node, one big aspect of it is the potential for being one's own worst nightmare, or not nightmare, enemy, and having different different thought processes, different self-limiting beliefs, being overly critical of the self, stuff like that. I always say that there's always like a million, every single day has multiple reasons, multiple things that you can get upset about, right? There's multiple, every single day has that. You can find something that can make you worry. You can find something that can really potentially bring you down. So as you have South Node in Virgo and your moon there, a lot of that will be brought over, but also a lot of intuitive gifts will be brought over. So the thing about Virgo is that, it's the opposite of Pisces. So Pisces is cosmic magic, Virgo is earth magic. And, just having planets on both nodes, there'll be this kind of imbalance between the emotions, which might be more, based on logic, common sense. Also, Virgo moons can sometimes have issues with anxiety and overthinking. I already kind of made reference to that, but because Mercury is ruling the moon, Mercury likes to, Mercury is the mind, right? Um, which makes it even more fascinating because your Mercury is in Pisces, where your North Node is. So it's just this axis of Virgo Pisces is really, really, really showing up. So if you think about that axis, it's one extreme, like if you go like the too far Virgo, you're in that domain of worrying, and it's kind of like Pisces is like that, represents that oneness, right? Like high spirituality, belief in the divine, connection to the divine. And Virgo, it's not that Virgo is not spiritual, it's that Virgo can sometimes, because it is more earthy, more, more close, more based and close to, your everyday life, right? I'm sure you know some Virgo people who, and Virgos are they're kind of all over the place, right? Because they can be very, very hard to pin down. Like they can be some of the most spiritual people, and then they can be some of the most self and outwardly critical people. It's hard to kind of find that the middle ground. So, and then with Pisces, it can be like, having all these amazing ideas but not following through, right? Like, and Virgo is represents like the steps that it takes to get there, right? But another thing about a Virgo moon person is that they can be overly perfectionist and kind of have that 100 or 0 type mindset when it comes to a lot of things. So it's just important to find that right balance, which in my mind is the Pisces spiritual, high spirituality and all the, Pisces is not afraid to dream. It's not afraid to dream the impossible. But then sometimes, like I said, it doesn't have the steps necessary, the tangible day by day steps to get there. So we'll just have the ideas, and then that's where Virgo comes in, is that it's able to provide that. And they're both very service oriented. It's a very service oriented axis. So yeah. So yeah, the South Node represents the been there, done that. And been there, done that. Virgo, you can be sure that it's kind of like this movement away from being overly logical towards, in this life, trying to, with your Mercury, which represents your brain, your communication, your thinking, your listening, just all that, everything cognitive, right? It's in Pisces, so that's going to form an opposition between Moon and Mercury, which can kind of make one kind of create like a relationship where the thinking and communicating is at odds with the core emotional needs. So yeah, like brain and heart, or yeah, just like brain, cognition and emotion can be at odds, which can cause a lot of indecisiveness. So meeting in the middle is to do things and have a life purpose that is service, that like service based, like where you really feel good about what you're doing. It's really it's really playing like a role, like what you're doing is has a lot, a major humanitarian aspect to it. And it could also be like artistic, there's a lot, because it's the fifth house north node, right? So sometimes you have a fifth house north node, there's this need to be a little bit selfish. Not selfish in like this bad way, but like selfish in a way where it's like creating good boundaries, right? If you're someone who is always giving, because like the fifth house is about, creative, authentic creativity, inner child, right? So if you're always giving, it can be hard to find that space in your life to really just be able to explore things on your own, right? So we'll come back to that, but that's one theme right off the bat. Now, with that said, the moon has some pretty rough aspects. Uranus and Saturn square. So, and then the sun has the Neptune square. I've kind of distanced myself from calling the moon the mom and the sun the dad, just because I've just had such diverse feedback about that. It's very hard to predict. Very, very hard to predict. So I tend to think that think of it more like the moon. It's your emotional needs when you're young, your emotional nurturing, and when Uranus is square the moon. I'll go back to base cam a little bit. Oh, this is like tilting over. Is that showing? Okay. So with the Uranus, which is how many degrees? 5-ish. Yeah. It can make someone just like very rebellious, right? Almost like stubborn in their efforts to kind of stand out from the crowd, to be different. So yeah, it creates a rebel, right? It creates a rebel and someone who doesn't just want to follow tradition blindly. And a big part of that also is just is coming to terms with that balance between like what also it could speak to like a upbringing where you have to move around a lot, where there wasn't like a solid grounding. Here's Esme. Esme, look at the nail chart. What part do I look at? Look, no. Look at the chart, Esme. Which one? The moon? Okay. You haven't really been doing your work lately, Esme. But I guess we're talking about the moon now. So yeah, Uranus is really like about individuality. So sometimes the square with the moon, the person can be making too big of efforts to be, that individual, to be that rebel. So yeah, just like knowing, that your path is going to be a very different one than than the traditional, but to kind of like look at yourself, because there can be these different like compulsions. Like for example, like let's say there's like a clearly like right way of going about things, right? Sometimes the person with like this type of aspect, there's two choices. There's one that's the more like rebellious one. There's one that's the more it's not rebellious, but it's like the right choice, right? So sometimes the person with this aspect would always choose the one that's kind of rebellious, right? So also it can give like almost like a compulsive need for stimulation. So it's good for like, it definitely creates like an exciting person, kind of like an Aquarian vibe to the person. But yeah, it can kind of just like be like, yeah, just like always like wanting to change, right? Subconsciously drawn to whatever's new and shiny, so it's really important to kind of be able to ground and see when that's happening, because like I said, a lot of people with this, I don't really like to say that their parents were divorced or anything like that, but maybe they had an upbringing where like I've seen everything from like having to move around a lot, to, you know, having divorced parents and spending, you know, some time with one, some time with the other. But usually what I see is that there's something in the upbringing that in the end makes them an exciting person because they have this ability to be mutable, to be changeable. But it can also just be like, you know, when that gets taken too far, that can be difficult, right? So yeah, unorthodox upbringing is common. And then there's the idea of like the balance between like emotional nurturing and independence attachment. So being able to like know, you know, not like be able to balance those two, you know, is very important. And yeah, so with the Saturn square, that's tough. Moon square Saturn's tough. Especially you're born 88, so yeah, first 30 years or so, there can be like a lot of you know, Moon and Saturn hard aspect is linked to melancholy, depressive times, shyness, you know, difficulty with like emotional vulnerability. And that's another thing about like the Moon and Virgo is that sometimes they can apply too much logic to um, their emotions. You know, emotions are energies that we have to feel, right? And that's just what can happen at times. So yeah, it all relates back to like the self-esteem and just really like learning to value the self, the unique self, right? Because like I said, the North Node and the fifth, stop it, stop playing with the wires. Stop it. You know, that's linked to like find, you know, the inner child, like I said, like through authentic creativity, finding the self. And in Pisces, it's like, you know, through spirituality and through the divine. And you know, the fact that the North Node is conjunct the Mercury, which Mercury in Pisces is like the, especially when you don't have any other planets in Pisces, Mercury there is highly intuitive, and it's kind of like the, you could say like the pathway between this side and the other side, and being able to really dive into that meditative mind. And yeah, just like think in very abstract ways. And you know, the fact that the North Node's there is showing that there's, you know, there's one part of you that like your mind and everything related to that is your thoughts and how you might write, for example. Like if you're a writer, those can give like a lot of clues as to the North Node direction, right? But there can just be that the setbacks, not setbacks, just like the opposition with the Moon, which, like I said, can you know, make one struggle to make decisions, where you're like not sure if you want to follow your feelings or your thoughts, heart or head, all that stuff. There can be like a lot of self doubt early on. So once again, it's about finding the balance in the two, right? The Pisces Virgo balance. But you know, with Saturn and the Moon, besides that, yeah, it just gets a lot easier after the first 30 years. Definitely a lot easier. Yeah, I guess like the main thing I see from that is you know, as a Virgo moon, there, like I said, there can be that perfectionism, feeling like you are your own worst enemy. Not always, not all Virgo moon's like such an interesting one. I've seen so many different variations, but like the more they're able to step away, like sometimes they feel like they need to like be somewhere. Like it's sometimes it's difficult for the Virgo moon to just trust divine timing, and sometimes they want to like, I feel like they want to like rush things, and because they want to like rush things, like when there's like something like meditating, for example, that's not based on it's not based on, it's not logic, it's not, it doesn't have any logic to it, right? It just is. You're not doing, you're just being, right? So they can sometimes like feel like they're not where they should be in their spiritual journey, um and be very hard on themselves. So a big thing to learn is self-compassion, and just meditation can be so good for that, actually. Um, and then also having like the Scorpio Pluto rising is just like super like, that is very interesting. It gives that mixed with being in Aries, like it's just this very like already a Scorpio rising can be quite intense regardless of what they say or don't say. But you add Pluto into that, and it just creates someone who is a very strong leader, who's and also one thing about like about the Virgo moon that I didn't say is that it creates someone who's very, very observant. Their mind, they're always noticing all the small things. So and sometimes that can be in themselves, and they have to like learn. So that's kind of like with that North Node of Pisces, it's like getting the mind to a place where like it's just like like instead of like the like what is it, ruminative a word, just like the ruminating, I guess, the thought processes that are kind of like up and down and all that. Yeah, it's just important to find that zen. So yeah, with the Pluto rising, there's lots of kind of complexity, lots of intensity. It brings the idea of power. So this is the thing with it being an Aries and Scorpio Pluto rising, you're a very powerful person, right? But that makes the idea of power and control issues become like a constant theme in a life, right? Some people with this can become like too bossy, especially in Aries. So we're always talking about the North Node. Well, Pisces is like this very soothing, calm, helper, compassionate energy, right? Which is what you're trying to become in this life. That's like the goal. So, yeah, like I think like with this Pluto ascendant, like it can just be like extreme. So one has to really look at their relationship to power, right? If when the individual is growing, if when you're growing up, things happened and it led to you seeing power as something external and something that you have to have. That can be difficult. But when power is seen as something that is internal, that one has naturally, right, and that one has to have a responsibility over, that's really important. And that's the higher energy of this, right? So one of the soul missions for Pluto rising is definitely moderation, and being able to really be honest about oneself. So yeah, just like learning, also just like learning, learning to just let things go sometimes. And another thing about Pluto and Scorpio is that the idea of control. So sometimes there can be a tendency to always want to be in control. And what do you think, Esme? And yeah, that it's just like a lot like with this energy, there's just a lot of surrender, right? And I think, first house Pluto in general, it's like this theme of like ego versus soul, right? Um, and there's just that battle of those two, right? In different areas of life. So how did you get fat, Esme? Yeah, so that's huge. But yeah, there can definitely be like different compulsions, I think, with this one too. And just feeling things very intensely. Scorpio soul or Scorpio rising, usually an old soul. Um, and yeah, so I think like this one is it can be it can definitely be difficult. There can be like very low Scorpio, manifestations of that, or very, very high ones, right? And the highest one is the person who's, you know, truly like figured out like their dharma, figured out like where they want to go in life, and they understand that they're a leader, right? And they want to pump people up and be that leader, and not try to, I guess, use that in the wrong way. So besides that, another thing, oh yeah, about this is like, having Scorpio Pluto rising, there's going to be like a lot of death, rebirth, transformation. That theme is going to be prominent in your life. So when so it's really going to separate your life into like these different chapters that are so separate from one another, right? So different. And you can kind of like gauge like when you're feeling really down, right? Like when you're just feeling like, wow, like I'm over this. I'm over this phase. There's like the question becomes like, okay, what do I need to surrender? How like what do I need to surrender within myself to make room for what I might not even be able to see right now, right? So yeah, it's really about like understanding any kind of obsessive or destructive types of behaviors, and just like growing, overcoming those. And then it just becomes, it creates someone who's just like unstoppable, no limit to what they can achieve, and just how they are. And then that makes Pluto so like Pluto rules your chart, and it's on your ascendant. So, it's a very strong Pluto. Um, so you'll have a very, you'll as having Aries and Scorpio, you're almost like unbreakable, right? It creates an unbreakable person. Um, so Aries, I don't really need to go so much into sun signs. I mean, I assume most people know about their sun sign. The fact that, it's in Aries, the first sign, fire sign, sixth house of Virgo, also. That's interesting. So service is a huge part of your life. Um, you're meant to really, really work in this lifetime, and there's a level of like karmic, not necessarily payback, but you're here, you're here for an important reason. And it could even be sacrificial in some type of way. Um, yeah. You got your algal Venus. That's nice. That's actually a good position for algal. We'll talk about that later. Taurus, 27 degrees. Take a stretch. I got a massage yesterday, like my first one since like November, I swear. Okay, I don't know why sometimes I just need to like talk about stuff. Break up the reading and just talk. But my back is like so much worse. Like, oh my God. It's like absolutely horrible. And I paid her like in advance a lot, and part of me is wondering, like, is she just like fucking up on purpose? Like that was like it wasn't a good massage. It's just no way. I'm gonna be sore for like many days. Maybe she's just like trying to like be terrible just to have me not get other massages. I don't know. Weird. But yeah, anyways, screw that. So Mars, should I talk about Mars and Capricorn? Mars and Capricorn, another indication of someone who is going to, that's very, very good for success. Mars is your assertiveness, your action, the action part of you. And, to have it in Capricorn creates someone who, already is an Aries. They're good at self-starting, right? Aries, that's just one thing they're really good at. And a Capricorn Mars can just over the long term, like slow and steady and it gets, better after the Saturn returns. So after 30, there could be like some setbacks until then, I always say like 2 steps forward, then the universe pushes you 3 steps back. But you just keep grinding, you keep working. And then after the Saturn return, you there's the tendency for um that same work ethic to be there, but not being pulled back by this, you know, BS, and you're kind of like left with that same grit and determination. So many successful people have that, and it's unaspected too. So that can definitely create someone who's, a powerhouse. And let's see this. So it is opposite Vesta. So yeah, that's about like the need to kind of not overwork yourself too. And that's another thing with like the Virgo and Capricorn, to not overwork yourself and to really respect your health and that of other people's. Um and it's really, really important to really, discover what lights your fire and just never let that passion fade. Um so yeah. And definitely like, destined to kind of direct your energy and your life force into something that's very sacred. Um, and there's like some connection to women there too. Um, like woman, like a woman or a group of women, providing like the encouragement and the help that you need in like a very important time. And let's see. So yeah, the sun in Aries is square Neptune. So that's the only aspect, right? Well, it's kind of square. Hmm. Well, the Neptune one is like spot on, and Saturn, it's like just outside of that. Anyways, yeah, so sun square Neptune, you have to watch out for like, being you have to watch out for being tricked. You have to watch out for being over idealistic. Um, it creates a very like it gives kind of like a very sensitive, compassionate side. Or it adds that to the Aries, which is usually very headstrong, and sometimes there can be like this feeling overwhelmed by how in touch you might be with the suffering of the world, and also sun is your identity, right? So Neptune can create like a fog over that can make one unsure of themselves, and kind of like yeah, it can create like a identity crisis. So that's like when you go from what the ego wants to what the soul needs, right? You start to, which in your case, the North Node in Pisces, that deep spiritual yearning, things make a lot more sense. And it's also really good for creativity, you know, anything artistic, creative, right brain. Um, but it also makes one, so like already with your Mercury and Pisces, there's a need to when I say like spend time alone, I'm speaking of like the need to understand that there can be like kind of like an osmosis like type of um thing that happens when it comes to like other people's thoughts and your own. And it's the same thing with the sun and Neptune in terms of identity, right? Because even though Aries is on its own very firm in its identity, right? Very sure of itself, the Neptune can, even if everyone else sees that individual in a certain way and sees them as like this very strong person, which I no doubt you are, sometimes like that Neptune square can make things difficult. And with the Mercury and Pisces, um, it can definitely like, yeah, you just have to like know where your base is like when you're alone, you know, and then when you um like are around, let's say, a group of people, a certain person, whatever it might be, maybe, to be able to like understand and be very mindful of like what you take in from other people. And let's say like your normal is here, you go around this person, and you're down here, and you come back to being alone after that period, and then you notice that difference, like, wow, like suddenly now that I'm alone, or now that person left, I feel like a lot like, wow, my thoughts are different. I feel a lot more spaciousness inside me. um that will inform you a ton. But it can be really tough to be around kind of like negative, like negative vibe people, I guess, like negative people and people with bad energies, right? Because you'll pick up on that. And sometimes with the Neptune square, you can like start to think that those are your own. So that's why, Esmond, stop biting the cables. Esmond, stay here. Go away. Yeah, so there's like a lot of times there's like, yeah, lots of battles that one has to overcome in order to really feel confident within themselves. And they can easily, like I said, that like fall victim to injustices. And yeah, it's just really important to know who to trust, to really like tune into that Pisces Mercury, the high vibe of it, right? The low vibe is like able to get tricked and able to like and not really having boundaries, good boundaries. But the high vibe of it is having good boundaries and then also knowing, okay, I can trust this person or I can't trust this person, right? So another thing with like the Sun Neptune is like, I say it so much, but like it works for like everyone, is like filming yourself. Like you can just like film yourself, like do like a vlog, like when you're alone, you don't have to show anyone, and you just talk about your day. You talk about, hey, this is going on, blah 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 blah, and um, that is a big thing. That's something that can be very, very, very helpful because Neptune rules mirrors. So the same thing with mirrors, but it also rules cameras, mirrors. So yeah, it's good for like anything related to like film, um, or cameras, film, like that kind of stuff. Being on video. Yeah, this combination is just like so interesting. Aries, Virgo, Scorpio. 'Cause you got like the double like Mars energy and then the Mercury. So it's like action and thoughtfulness, tact and action, but also like it's Pluto, so it's like transformation. Where'd my camera go? What's happening? Oh, okay. All right. So Venus in the seventh, that's a nice place, Venus in Taurus. Um, your seventh house has Jupiter and Venus in it, so that's really nice. And Juno, wow. So you definitely, reliability is very important in romance. And there's kind of like, Taurus energy in love is really, in Mars and Capricorn too. It's not someone who just wants to mess around, it's someone who wants something serious. And there's usually like a slow and steady approach to the relationship. Um, and Taurus is very much about the senses. So definitely like a desire for that closeness. In the seventh house, Venus is really nice because you're able to really see the beauty in intimate partners. So it's very good for like, you know, what is my cat doing? Headaches, Jesus Christ. He nearly just fell. He's like grabbing onto the stair, this like, oh my God, headaches. This is such a stupid jump. He's like gonna fall like all the way down the stairs. But I didn't save him. Headaches. What was that? Anyways, yeah. So sometimes Venus is awesome. Because it's very easy to like, you know, be with a partner and just see the negative side of them, right? But with Venus there, it is very good for relationships. And then having Jupiter around the descendant also is going to make someone very lucky with relationships, right? And having Jupiter in the seventh, people with that, I mean, I've talked to some people with that who, definitely have a lot of luck with their partners, and their partners really help them learn, help them grow. And even part of fortune, around the Venus in that seventh house, it's like, it's through like, very solid relationships that you find your greatest joy. Um, so yeah, it's like through just stability in general and groundedness. That's like, the highest energy. So through love, because Venus at the end of the day is, self-love, and then it's just projected outwards. So yeah, but there's definitely a lot of really good energy here for that. Juno also in the seventh house in Taurus, that would speak to like your ideal like marriage, like that kind of level of like mate, I guess, partner. And yeah, it's just kind of the same type of energy, right? Someone who's very consistent. You know, there's obviously like a need for like a very strong commitment. So a Juno seventh house person will have, marriage and long-term commitment is like a big goal for them. And yeah, and then Taurus, it's just like that once again, that need to feel very safe, very secure in relationships. And wanting that, yeah, that really reliable, stable partner. So yeah, and maybe, a little bit of, I don't like to say like a little bit of, the traditional relationship, but Taurus just, it's like I always give the metaphor of like, it's like building, it's like when they spend a lot of time on those big buildings with the foundation, that's kind of like the energy of the relationship, right? Where um want to make sure that that foundation is really, really secure so you can build that massive skyscraper with no fault at the bottom. And that's really, really good to have all these energies here because with the Neptune square to the sun, there would be the need to watch out for being deceived by people. And also with Neptune square sun, it can create someone who can also like be blamed for things that they didn't do. Like sometimes they can like feel like people will just like project guilt onto them, and they'll sometimes even like appear guilty when they're not, and not appear guilty when they are. So it's, yeah. But the high energy of that is someone who just moves towards something very compassionate, right? Is like a life goal, and in line with the Pisces North Node. And with that said, the Mercury in Pisces, like it's so intuitive, such a strong imagination, and that's what you want to follow, right? Um, just like crazy, like the right brain, so like so developed, like so abstract minded, right? Which is interesting how it would work with being a Virgo moon. Um, Sometimes there's like difficulty like distinguishing between fantasy and reality, and that's a big thing for Pisces people, like Pisces Mercury also, by the way, and Pisces Sun. Um, it's like getting real and distinguishing between those two, and not living in the dreams, and that's why the Virgo Moon is in that axis is so important because you can be a big dreamer, right? And that's where you're meant to go towards those dreams, right? With the North Node. And even speak like, I think North Node, in Pisces conjunct Mercury could be like someone who can like speak their dreams into existence. but then the moon in Virgo, it's like use that in the best way, right? Use the part of that that helps you um understand the steps it takes to get somewhere, right? That's what you want to use. And understanding that perfectionism can leak in and kind of keep you away. So it's like really that you know, it's like having these beautiful, like amazing dreams, aspirations, and then a realistic approach, but not like so firm that it's like kind of shitting on your own like big ideals, you know? So it's like keeping the ideals um and adding like the right amount of realism to them, and step by step basis to get there. We'll talk more about that in the session. What else about that? Yeah, I think Mercury and Pisces people also can have like these periods of time where they're just like they just need to go, they just need to like be away from everything and everyone, and then they come back and it's just like so good for their mental health to escape, but not too much, right? Because that's the thing with Neptunian energy, Neptune Pisces energy, is that and even like the Pluto is not to escape in a way that's detrimental to the health, like substances. Uh, that's important. Okay, so Chiron eighth and Gemini. So with all what's going on in your third house with Neptune and Uranus there, um, I see this with a lot of my clients. They have this placement, this Chiron and Gemini. Eighth house Chiron, I'll just say it. Sometimes there's issues around um like I've definitely like noticed that for sexual trauma, not like every time, but there can just be like a fear of of deep, of close intimacy, sexuality, um and just like being very sensitive to like the painful undercurrents of the world. It's definitely very good for becoming like a very a healer that uses intuition. But then the thing that the Chiron is like the wound. So in Gemini, a lot of times it's feeling very misunderstood growing up. Sometimes it's because these people were like ahead of their time, um, and just difficult for other people to understand. And with your Mercury is also square Chiron, so that makes perfect sense, right? Um, because a lot of people with that, they grew up thinking that they lacked intelligence. And with Mercury and Pisces, one thing about that placement is that you know like a lot of the school in America is very like Capricornian. It's very like left brain, like and the Mercury and Pisces people are way more, you know, they really thrive in the artistic realms. They thrive in anything that's kind of abstract and that's different, using the right brain, as I said, So sometimes people with that can feel like, they can be really, really good at the high philosophical, abstract type material, but then when it comes to like the very basic things, like I don't know, making like a couch from IKEA, they can have difficulty. Um, so yeah, like the issue there. What the heck? What'd you do, Esme? Was that loud noise? Oh my god. So yeah, there can just be like issues where you just feel like you lack intelligence, and where there can be like difficulty with kind of asserting your own thoughts, your own opinions. But it's really good, Chiron Mercury square, for being able to learn from your own experiences. And it makes someone like a really, really good, like listener, and someone who can heal others through their words and knowing what to say at the right time. And then the Gemini, it's like about learning to trust your own thought processes, because it's very common for people with this to have taken in the idea early on that for whatever reason their way of thinking was wrong, right? um but the more you go into that eighth house, kind of Pluto ascendant energy, right, like deep inside the self, um the more you start to learn, right? um Sometimes people with Mercury, Chiron and Gemini, they had some kind of like communication issue growing up. And usually it's just like the early schooling was difficult, right? um but yeah, it's very, I see it with so many of my clients, and I'm like, I wonder why. Maybe it's because there are people who are able to think outside the box, and maybe they had ideas growing up that were ahead of their parents. um so yeah, a lot of times it is that person who feels like the odd one out in their family. um yeah. Let's see. Also, the vertex is right on Chiron, in Gemini, eighth house. So the vertex is, I think of it as like the doorway to higher awareness. So, once again, in the eighth house, Gemini, it's so crazy. Like I keep seeing eighth house Gemini. Um, and basically it's through your own healing and through the healing of others, um, and um, being able to kind of connect the unspoken realms, right? Or to be able to to put words to the unspeakable. Um, that's really important. All right. I did take a quick little pause. Okay, so anyways, yeah. So Leo midheaven. Okay, so it's ruled by the sun. So, and then there's Black Lilith there. Interesting. Um, hmm. I'll look back at these two. Yeah, so definitely this kind of like aspect, this thing that keeps showing up of like potentially feeling misunderstood. With the moon square Chiron, it could, moon is usually the mother. Like I said, I don't like to stick to that because I've seen it be wrong a lot. But you know, it's just about rising above the pain. And Chiron with the moon, once again, is another aspect very strong for people who can be that Chiron healer, who can really help people. Um, so yeah, like with everything in the third house, Uranus, I kind of made reference to that. That gives like, very original ideas, quick minds, um, very quick, witty, able to get like downloads, um, and really, probably interested in unusual subjects. And yeah, it's just, it can give like atypical way of kind of self-expression. And then, with Saturn also there, that, that kind of goes with the Chiron and Gemini, where people who have that usually feel restricted in terms of their communication early on. Fear of self-expression is common. So it's like through like a lot of effort, and with Neptune there, like a more following that Mercury and Pisces of kind of right-brained, kind of your own individualistic way of self-expression and communication. That's how you really find yourself in this respect. And a lot of times with Neptune third house, it's through the arts and different spiritual creative pursuits that you're able to really find yourself. But one thing about Neptune the third is that it can also bring like a scattered mind and a level of mental confusion that can also happen with the Mercury in Pisces. But then having Mars in the third is very in Capricorn. That actually makes one like very, the energy is in that direction of wanting to find new ideas, wanting to communicate. Third house is more about like the immediate surroundings. So, wanting to kind of like, have an impact on your immediate surroundings. And third house Mars has, definitely makes someone typically quite talkative, but then, you have the Saturn there also. So it could be someone who comes into their own in that respect. And also with siblings, if you have any, there could be, like clashes with siblings. So yeah. Um, hmm. Yeah, I guess I was saying earlier about like the vertex and Chiron, how that is just showing that there's like a lot of fate in that Chironic journey, and that the more that you are able to go deep into your own uh pain, right? Into your own Plutonian death, rebirth, transformation, you know, surrender, spiritual journey with the North Node in Pisces, and allow yourself to be healed, to heal yourself in whatever way is needed. That is opening up all the doors for you. Vertex on Chiron, right? It's someone who's meant to be a healer, and whatever that means to you. And then yeah, so in terms of the Ceres and Pisces, interesting on the fifth house. So that is someone Ceres. Is it Ceres? Ceres? I always pronounce it wrong. It's like a second moon. It's not as important, obviously, but in Pisces, it's that oneness with the world that makes one feel at their best. And someone who really like feels who's able to really nurture others through being able to relieve them of their pain, other people of their pain, and someone who has like lots of compassion and likes to receive that same compassion and that same kind of depth in relationships. And then Palace and Aquarius in the fourth house, very interesting. That Palace and Aquarius is like very like ahead of your time, brilliant kind of mind. Um, and really easily grasping new ideas, and very humanitarian. And in the fourth house, it's your home environment really is a reflection of your, you like to really be creative within the home. And then also on a deeper level, you have this wisdom that comes from like this really deep part of yourself, of your own, deep within yourself. And yeah, like just like like enjoying like, creative expression within the own home, as I was saying before. And yeah, just like the palace in the fourth house is just like, wanting the home to be a place, yeah, where all kinds of things can be possible, or deep spirituality, anything creative, any outlet that that really gets you going. The home is really good for that. That's the ninth. So that would make someone give someone a lot of focus and a good work ethic when it comes to finding the higher truths in life. Um, so, you know, sometimes one can be sidetracked by things that they get like a little bit like dogmatic about belief systems. But in the end, it creates a teacher, the person who wants to like share all the truths that they found with the people around them. And it's in Cancer, so that makes someone who's like committed to their family of origin and loved ones in general. Um, but also there's that potential for withdrawing once they're hurt, from withdrawing from reality, and just like the crab crawls back in the shell, right? And in terms of work, you'll want to work with people who you feel like a real closeness to. So let's see. So I think with the Black Moon Lilith and Leo in the 10th, Black Moon Lilith is it's like our how we defeat ourselves, um that can be turned into a great asset. So in the 10th in Leo, it could just be needing the spotlight too much, and also it's like that relationship of like giving and taking, and finding that balance between that. Some people with that can feel like they're always giving, but it's not actually like that. Also, I think Black Widow and Leo can be looked at as a fear of change. Um, and people sometimes with that can, so it can relate to that Pluto rising. And a lot of times it's like, you know, the position or like whatever, wherever they're at in society is so important to them. And it's like ego and self-esteem is linked. So, the integration comes from allowing that change, allowing that um allowing others to take charge sometimes, and pumping other people up, right? Yeah, 10th house part, Black and Lilith, I think, can be looked at as, sometimes just like always wanting to be number one, um and putting like, yeah, a lot of energy into their career. Because like a midheaven in Leo already, um sometimes like, they want to shine at what they're doing professionally, and very good leaders. So it's just like, as long as it's something that really, as I said earlier, like lights your fire, and that really resonates with that North Node in Pisces, journey towards higher spirituality and compassion, and then that's great. And sometimes I'll tell people these things, and they're they'll tell me when we talk that they have their job that they like, it's like kind of pays the bills, but then they have their passion. So I never want to like tell someone like, what they're doing in their life is wrong, because I believe that everyone's meant to be doing what they're doing, and that there's different eras in people's lives, right? Um, and sometimes it's like not every North Node of Pisces is meant to be an astrologer or a psychologist or whatever, right? Just like through their life experiences, they're meant to open themselves up to more authentic self-expression, to more to a more authentic version of themselves, and lots of self-acceptance, and that can come through the deepening of the spiritual relationship with itself. All right, let's take a look at this. I think, yeah, just one thing with with that Aries and Scorpio rising is that people can definitely get jealous of you. Because it can create such a powerful personality that, yeah, some people just might not. It just, yeah, it might kind of like trigger some people. So, just knowing that is important, because even if you are shy, reserved, people definitely notice a Pluto rising, Scorpio rising, um, Pluto Scorpio rising, when they, like they just have a very big aura, and it can be a little bit intimidating to people sometimes. But that nice Venus and Taurus can make things a lot more laid back. Yeah, and then Venus and Jupiter and Taurus is just very good for money, and for um kind of just attracting that. All right, let's see here. Like staring at my computer because there's so many. I'll show you for a second. So I'm trying to find the conjunctions. Yeah, I'll spare you. Yeah, so definitely like a big time humanitarian, willing to go against the consensus and reality, standing up for what you believe in. Also, Amor and Neptune, that's a really nice combination, because Amor is about unconditional love. It's one of my favorite asteroids, and Neptune is too. So those two together just can create someone who just loves unconditionally, and who just has the energy of love in their heart, right? Because I always say that love is an energy at the end of the day. And if you don't have love in your heart, you can't externalize it. Um, and there's so much in your chart, like even like the Taurus energy is like very simple. And I feel like the energy of love is simple in itself. That's why Venus and Taurus is like such a it's in its dignity position, Taurus and Libra. Um, so yeah, that's nice. Um, So you have like you have a few of the asteroids that are linked to like witch energy. So that's big. Oh, one thing I forgot to say, you lack air in your chart. So you should definitely do breath work if you don't already. Lacking air can be rough. And it just makes that whole idea of communication, seeing, being able to kind of like sense like other people's kind of experience, like that can be tricky. So yeah. And just like having it can make it difficult when it comes to it can make someone kind of like more subjective. So yeah, like kind of pushing yourself to have more objectivity in general. Okay, so you had Hamal. So Mercury in Markab. See what it says here. Good mind, headstrong, quick in speech, diplomatic, capable, writer, criticized, friends become enemies. It also talks about like smoking being bad if you smoke. I don't know about this. Anyone having this should not smoke or a serious health problem will result. Different types of lung issues will come if they like to smoke or otherwise taken foreign matter into the lungs. They should drink lots of hot teas. Ginger, sassafras, red ginger, or golden seal root in small amounts. These teas are purifiers and are too strong to drink continuously as a preventative. A pinch of one of the teas in a large cup of hot water every other day would be adequate. However, if the disease has already taken hold, ginger root should be taken in small amounts every day, alternating with sassafras tea mixed with ginger root to add to the cleansing properties of the herbs. Combining sassafras with ginger root would ordinarily be too powerful for the body to handle, but in extreme cases, these persons can handle these combinations for 3 days using a teaspoon of each herb. Okay. Yeah. You can search Markab astrology if you want to know about that. Oh yeah, and then so yeah, you have like a lot of like really magical parts of your chart. Very artistic. So yeah, you know, when we talk live, but you already have the next session, we'll bring everything together. Um, I always say that astrology is, yeah, astrology, it's like, this is your chart. You have the same chart as someone else. People are on the same day, everything's the same, but it's the chart, which is the deck, like the metaphoric deck of cards you have, right? Mixed with your free will. The two come together. So, it's always interesting to kind of, talk live and get to hear like your story. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And let me know when you have taken this all in, and we can schedule that for the next, yeah, whenever you're ready for the next date on my schedule. So it's not like a long wait. And thank you for the wait, for the patience for this. It's been a crazy time. Being gone a month did not make things easier at all. So I appreciate you. So yeah, like a lot to go over. Like I'm very, very curious to hear how this kind of Pisces Virgo energy has played out in your life, mixed with like that Pluto rising, Scorpio rising. I feel like with that one too, like there's like a big artistic, like there's big like potential for like being able to like put their all of their energy to like a creative outlet. It's like an interesting chart because like it's like such a mix of like these more traditionally like masculine energies, but with like a hint of like this real creative kind of more feminine. So it's very interesting. I haven't seen main charts like this. So just let me do one thing. Oh, I didn't even see the grand trine you have with Moon, Mars, and Venus. So that's a Earth grand trine. So yeah, I mean that speaks even further to that creativity, and then the ability to, with Moon Venus, um Moon Venus, that it just creates like a lot of charm, a lot of balance. Um and really the ability to kind of create beauty around you. So it's really nice. Um and then, with the Moon Mars, that one's less than a degree. That's just like a lot, that's actually very good for self-confidence and for being assertive and kind of like rise to the challenge in different areas of life. And then with the what was the last one is Venus, Venus Mars. That's just like Venus trine Mars is, it's in love, it creates lots of loyalty, and there's that real kind of ability to kind of balance out independence and still being your own person with intimacy. So having relationships like that don't damper your North Node journey. Because sometimes, as humans, we get into relationships that take us away from our from our journey, from our highest potential. So and yeah, it's really good for creativity too. But sometimes people with a grand trine list will take their creative talents for granted, and not make the most of them. And oh yeah, and then I'm looking at the aspect patterns now, because there's a T square too. I didn't see that between Chiron, um, Mercury, and the Moon. Yeah, yeah, obviously, because yeah. So and it shoots out in Sag. Interesting. So that's someone that really relates to kind of like this like battle between mind the Virgo side and the Pisces side, and like Chiron squaring both, speaking to like, the healer aspect and like the pain that kind of can play out there. So the resolution point is second house Sagittarius, and that is all about you finding your own higher truths and higher beliefs, um, and kind of like a value system that's based on all of your explorations, whether it's traveling, whether it's just, testing out different philosophical points of view. I think of it like a rule book, it's like a like a rule book for you and in your life and what you believe in. And you kind of just like uh you know are always updating that, right? You're always updating that with the new findings you have, of what represents truth. And um and that's kind of how you can get past how you can make decisions where it's like, that um mind versus you know emotions. But if it's linked to your belief, your higher belief system, your higher truth, then there's not really any chance for them to, that you're gonna be consistent. That you're not gonna be making mistakes in that respect, because like everything you're doing is based on things you have a deep belief in. Okay. And then and then the other T square is Moon, Chiron, and Uranus, and that shoots out at the North Node. So it's like kind of like like to heal, to heal the wound. And yeah, it's Moon, like Saturn, Uranus, Moon, Chiron shoots out right on the North Node, close to North Node, close to Mercury. So it's like the more you lean into that spiritual relationship with yourself, the more you lean into like the creative outlets, whatever that is. It could just be like you journaling on your own, you writing poetry on your own. That brings that emotional healing, that makes you more grounded emotionally. That gets in that also, it could be the journaling thing, that gets you, that heals you, right? And that gets you more in line with yourself. And it could definitely kick away any kind of like perfectionism or self-limiting beliefs that can be, or anxiety that can come with that Virgo moon. All right, that is it. Thank you so much, and we shall talk soon. All right, ciao ciao, bye.